My name is Judy. I'm sitting in a hospital conference room, the air thick with tension. The fluorescent lights hum, and the faces around the table are a mix of anticipation and unease. My mother-in-law, Mrs. Thompson, sits at the head, her pearls glinting under the harsh light. She's been waiting for this moment, convinced she'll expose what she believes is a lie. But little does she know, the truth is about to shatter her world. Let me take you back to the beginning. I'm a senior genetic counselor at Cedarwood Medical Center. I've spent my days deciphering the secrets hidden in our DNA, helping families navigate the most difficult news. But my own family life has been far from smooth. I grew up in a small town. My mother passed away when I was 10 due to a rare heart condition. After that, it was just me and my father, a hard-working mechanic. We lived in a modest two-bedroom house, and I worked part-time at a local diner to help make ends meet. Through hard work and determination, I got into college and eventually landed my job at the medical center. I met my husband, Mark, at a community event. He was an architect, kind-hearted and intelligent. When he proposed, I thought I'd finally found the family I'd always dreamed of. A family where I belonged, where there were no gaps. A few years later, our daughter, Lily, was born. It was a long and difficult labor, lasting 16 hours. Mark held my hand so tightly, his knuckles turning white. When they placed Lily on my chest, she was 7 pounds 2 ounces, with a head full of dark hair. Mark cried before I did. But just 3 days after Lily's birth, Mrs. Thompson came to the hospital. She took Lily from the bassinet without asking and held her at arm's length, studying her face. "This baby can't be our blood," she said, loud enough for everyone in the room to hear. Mark's face went blank, and his sister, Sarah, crossed her arms and smirked. I was still sore, still in a hospital gown, and learning how to breastfeed. But I smiled back because I knew the truth was on my side. I've spent 14 years reading what blood actually says. In the days that followed, the texts started. They came through Mark's phone, but they were clearly aimed at me. "Just checking in, dear. Newborns can be fussy in an unsettled environment," Mrs. Thompson would text. And then, "Did you know features can skip generations? LOL. It was as if she was trying to plant seeds of doubt. I also started to notice changes in the family. Mark's cousin, Emily, stopped liking my posts on social media. His aunt, Helen, who used to comment on everything, went silent. And Sarah, who had never initiated a conversation with me in the 5 years I'd known her, sent me a text saying, "Hope you're resting. New moms need their strength." It felt like a veiled threat. One day, Mark's friend, Tom, called him while I was nursing Lily in the living room. I could only hear Mark's end of the conversation.
"What?
Who told you that?" he said, followed by a long silence. "That's insane, man. That's absolutely insane." After he hung up, he told me that Sarah had told Tom's wife that I'd been working late a lot during my 3rd trimester and that it was suspicious. I was furious. I'm a genetic counselor. I often have to counsel families going through the worst moments of their lives, and sometimes those appointments run late. Sarah had taken an ordinary fact and turned it into a weapon. Mark and I started to have discussions about taking a paternity test. "Maybe we should just do it to shut them up," he said one night. I was appalled. "So your mother accuses me of cheating, your sister spreads the rumor, and the solution is for me to take a test to prove I'm not a liar?" I asked. He was silent for a long time. Mrs. Thompson planned a welcome Lily dinner at her house. It was supposed to be a warm gathering, but I knew it was an ambush the moment I walked in. The seating arrangement was strategic. Mrs. Thompson at the head, Sarah to her right, Helen across from me with a clear view. Mark and I were placed at the far end near the kitchen. After the plates were cleared and the coffee was poured, Mrs. Thompson stood up. "There are questions about Lily's parentage," she said, looking at me like a judge at a defendant. "I think the right thing is to settle it with a DNA test. If there's nothing to hide, there's nothing to fear." I took a sip of my coffee and said, "Fine, let's test the blood." This wasn't what she expected. She'd built the whole evening around my refusal. I had a condition, though. "I'll run the paternity test. Mark and Lily, father and daughter, at an accredited lab with a proper chain of custody. But since you said our blood, I want a grandparentage panel too, I said. Mrs. Thompson lifted her chin and said, test whatever you like. The truth doesn't care how many questions you ask it. The week that followed was the loneliest of my life. Mark was still there, changing diapers at 3 a.m. and bringing me water when I nursed, but there was a wall between us. The rest of the family went silent. Sarah sent a text saying, praying for clarity for everyone, which felt like a threat. I called my colleague Dr. Ava Reed, a clinical geneticist with 18 years of experience. I told her what I needed, a paternity panel for Mark and Lily and a grandparentage panel for Mrs. Thompson and Lily. She understood immediately. During this time, I accidentally discovered a group chat on Mark's phone. It was called Family Secrets. The early messages were about holiday planning and birthday reminders, but starting around my 7th month of pregnancy, the tone changed. Sarah had written, has anyone noticed Judy stays at work late some nights? Mrs. Thompson replied, a woman who works that late doesn't have her priorities straight. And then, buried in the chat, I found a message from Mrs. Thompson. I don't know why Mark turned out the way he did. He never favored his father much. But that boy is mine, and I'll protect this line. I'd always noticed that Mark didn't look much like his father, Mr. Thompson, who was tall and lanky with blonde hair and blue eyes. Mark was broad-shouldered with brown eyes and a square jaw. Sarah, on the other hand, looked just like her father. I'd always thought it was just the quirks of genetics, but this message added a new weight to it. The swabs were collected at a satellite office. Mrs. Thompson arrived in her pearls, looking dignified but impatient. Let's get this over with, she said. Dr. Reed oversaw the collection. The samples were sealed in kits with barcodes, and everything was done with a strict chain of custody. By Wednesday, Mrs. Thompson had already called several family members, telling them she'd submitted to the test willingly and expected complete vindication by the weekend. On Friday morning, Dr. Reed called. Results are in. Can you come to the office? She asked. I put Lily in the car seat and drove to the hospital. On the way, I thought about the night Mark was born. He told me that his parents had lived in a small town then, and his father had driven his mother to a rural hospital. It was a chaotic night with several women in labor, and the nursery was understaffed. When I arrived at Dr. Reed's office, she had 2 sealed folders on her desk. Paternity first, she said, opening the first folder. Combined paternity index, greater than 1 million. Probability of paternity, 9,998%. Mark is Lily's biological father, she said. I exhaled in relief. Then she opened the second folder more slowly. The grandparentage panel. This is where it gets complicated, she said. The probability of a grandparental relationship between Mrs. Thompson and Lily was less than 0.1%. The implications were clear. If Mark was Lily's father and I was her mother and Mrs. Thompson was excluded as the grandmother, then Mrs. Thompson was not Mark's biological mother. I sat in the parking lot for a long time trying to process this. Mark had spent his whole life as a Thompson, living up to their expectations, and none of it was based on blood. I knew I had to tell Mark. That night, after Lily's evening feeding, I sat him down in the kitchen. The paternity test came back. You're Lily's father, I said. He closed his eyes. Open them. Okay, good. There's more, I said, setting the grandparentage report on the counter. He picked up the report and scanned it. So, she's not my mother, biologically? He asked. We talked about the possibility of a hospital switch. Mark sat down on a stool, looking lost. She raised me. She's still my mom, he said, his voice cracking. We decided to go to the resolution gathering the next day. We knew the truth would be a shock to Mrs. Thompson, but we also knew it had to be told. Now, here we are in the conference room. Mrs. Thompson says, this baby can't be our blood. The room goes silent. I smile and say, thank you, Mrs. Thompson, for asking the question. Dr. Reed steps in with a manila envelope. She opens it and starts with the paternity analysis. Mark Thompson is the biological father of Lily Thompson. There is no ambiguity, she says. Mrs. Thompson's face changes slightly, but she quickly regains her composure. Fine. The paternity is settled, but the grandmother panel will show the bloodline, she says. Dr. Reed then reveals the grandparentage results. Mrs. Thompson is excluded as the biological grandmother of Lily Thompson. The probability of a grandparental relationship is less than 0.1%, she says. Mrs. Thompson leans forward. That's impossible. If Mark is the father, then I'm the grandmother, she says, her voice brittle. I turn to her and say, the test confirmed Lily is Mark's biological daughter, which means I was faithful. And the grandparentage test shows you are not biologically related to Mark. Based on the data and the fact that Mark was born at a small rural hospital, the findings are consistent with a newborn identification error. Mrs. Thompson stands up, her chair hitting the wall behind her. That's a lie. The lab is wrong. You tampered with it, she shouts. Dr. Reed calmly replies, the test was run by an independent AAB, accredited laboratory, and the chain of custody was maintained. The results are not in dispute. Mrs. Thompson turns to Mark. Mark, tell them I'm your mother, she says. Mark looks at her and says, you are my mother. You raised me, but I can't deny the truth. Mrs. Thompson's face crumples. She sits back down, her pearls rising and falling with her rapid breathing. I spent my whole life proving myself to this family. I kept the house, the name, the legacy, she says, almost to herself. She then pulls the pearls off her neck and places them on the table. This is your fault, she says to me. I reply, I answered the question you asked, and the one you should have asked a long time ago. She stands up and walks out of the room without looking back. The room empties slowly. Sarah leaves with red eyes, and Helen and the others follow. Mark and I sit there, looking at the pearls on the table. In the weeks that followed, Mrs. Thompson didn't call. Sarah sent Mark a text saying she didn't know what to say. Dr. Reed filed a request for the hospital's archived records, but it would take months to review. Mark drove to Mrs. Thompson's house 3 weeks later. When he came back, he said, she's not ready. She says the hospital made a mistake with the test. We know it will take time for her to come to terms with the truth. But through all this, I've learned that family is not just about blood. It's about the people who choose to love and support you. And Mark, Lily, and I were a family no matter what. Blood may tell you where you came from, but it doesn't tell you where you belong. That part you choose.